Hello, friends. Welcome back to episode number 101 of Unperfect. If you missed episode number 100, you will definitely want to pause this episode and head back to part one of this interview that I had with the lovely, compassionate, and so wise Dr. Michaela Albertson. We talked about several themes in her book, What I Wish I Could Tell You About Midlife, A Woman's Guide to Health in the Body You Actually Have. We talked about topics like body image, the myths of health and wellness culture, what you need to know about supplements, and how to effectively complete the stress cycle. So head back there if you need to. The link is in the show notes, because today we are jumping back into our conversation, and Michaela's going to be sharing more wisdom on topics in women's health, like finding our identity in life stages, getting a better understanding of what menopause is, intimacy, yep, we're going to go there, and how to hold a balanced appreciation for the bodies we actually have. So listen in. Hey friend, do you desire to connect with God in real and tangible ways? Do you struggle with the reality that life just hasn't gone the way you imagined it would? Well, you have come to the right place, and you're not alone. I'm Shelly Sneed, the host of Unperfect, and it's my weekly mission to inspire women like you and me to grow spiritually through authentic stories rooted in the truth of God's Word. Hope and probably some humor are coming up. There's one quote where you said, women can do everything, but we don't have to do everything to prove our worth. And I think so many of the stressful situations that I have either gotten myself into by things I could control or find myself in, I think I'm trying to do everything. Like you said, I'm not prioritizing. What do I need? I just need the immediate needs right here. Yeah. And I just love that you point out through the book, it's not that I can't do that, maybe I can do everything, but that may not be what's best for me, for my body, for my family, for my children.
Yes, exactly. I think I grew up thinking, well, a strong woman should be in some career, making good money and doing these things and really making a difference somewhere. But also a good mom and a good wife is like taking care of everything at home and still like just killing it at dinner and volunteering at school and all these things. I had these kind of two competing stories that I needed to try to mesh together. And I spent a long time working that out. And I think I was doing okay for a while, but now here I am in midlife. And right. Like all my kids are now in school and they're growing up and they're moving on to things. And I'm sort of trying to figure that all out again, I think. And I'm having to remind myself, like, women can do anything, but we don't have to do everything, right? Like, right. So what are the things that fit me right now and what I'd like to do, or what fits my family right now? And so this is like the conversation that I have with one of my good friends on a weekly basis. What are we doing with our lives? Like, should we be going back to work, or what are we doing? You were in something for a long time with younger kids and maybe had that figured out. And then suddenly it's different when you're 45 and beyond. And I think that's a big thing that women are also trying to navigate alongside the hormonal changes and all the other things. And I don't think we talk about that very much either.
Right. And I think almost every season of your life, you're reinventing or figuring out what is my identity. Because you go from, college to married to with young kids. But I do think, I don't know that I could place, what's harder on one, but especially during this season that we're talking about with midlife, there's definitely, it's almost like everything you knew came to a halt. It's kind of like I've been through every one of these seasons, and I guess with each of those younger stages, you're looking at the next one, right? Number one, falsely thinking it's going to be easier. But
yes.
Number two, thinking, okay, well, when I get here, this is what my life will look like. So yeah, I do think in this stage of life, there's definitely an identity kind of crisis of who am I, what am I doing, what am I about? I do love, so I'm going to read the name of this chapter because I can't even pronounce some of these words. But one of the chapters is rage, premenstrual, dysphoric disorder, and hormonal changes in the later years. But you have this detailed day-to-day calendar of events, and I'm pretty sure I spit out my coffee laughing out loud at some of the things. So thank you for that very relatable piece of literary genius. You'll have to get the book because I'm not going to read it all to you. But she goes through each day or set of days through this month of what your life may look like, where you're describing, okay, on day 28, go take a walk, make a middle note to ask God why he created hormones, and then she gives insights for your spouse or your kids. Like you can do therapy later, kids. Right now you need to stay outside or whatever. Mommy needs to stay outside. But we've all been there. And like we were saying, it could be multiple times a month. It kind of depends on your unique body. And so I know there's a lot you could unpack. We'll let everyone go grab the book to read all of it. But I do want to ask, as a doctor, because I think this is interesting too, what would be the most common misconception about midlife health that you encounter as a physician in your practice?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things there. I think right now, it seems like menopause talk and perimenopause is kind of a trending topic. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like right now, almost anything and everything that's happening in midlife for women points back to perimenopause and menopause and hormones. And while they may be a player in what's going on, I just like to say that our health and our midlife is so much more than hormones. And so I worry that sometimes we're getting tunnel vision now on that. Right. So for a long time, there was no discussion about menopause, and women were like, why aren't we talking about this? And so I am really happy that we're talking about it now, but I just don't want us to get stuck on that as the only thing that's going on, because as you mentioned, we have thyroid glands, and we have hearts, and we have kidneys and livers and bowels and joints, right, and all these other things.
And adult children.
And adult children, yeah, because above and beyond that, we have another mental health. Yes, and our relationships. And so our health is much, much bigger than simply hormones. And so I think we've sort of tried to box up midlife. Like, if you could just get this elusive hormone balance down, then everything would be great. But again, we are really complex creatures, right? We have very complex bodies that we're still trying to figure out in the science world. And so just that midlife is more than menopause is what I'd love for women to come away with today. And so let's talk about our hormones, but let's kind of talk about everything else as well.
Sure. Yeah. And I think one of the other things you point out, you can correct me if this is wrong, but I think I always thought, well, you go through menopause and then that's just a few years, and then I think you point out this is like the rest of your life. Is right. This process.
Yeah, it's a long time, that perimenopausal time, in that sort of when you're going through that menopause transition, that's somewhere between 4 and 10 years long. It can start as early as your later 30s, but typically starts in your mid 40s. And then once you are in menopause, then you can just say, I'm menopausal for life.
Right.
So yes, much of the chaos, the fluctuation of hormones calms down after you've gone through menopause. But some of the symptoms and some new risks for women can come up in that menopausal state when you no longer have estrogen around. And so, yeah, I think we've got to get used to talking about it and thinking about it. It's not just this short transition time. It is truly like a new phase of life.
Right. And I think that I guess I bring that up because it kind of points back to, okay, this is the body I actually have from here on out. So I want to, John 10:10 says he's come that we may have life and live it to the full. So I want to live to the full, right? Live abundantly and not be waiting for this stage to be over or,
Right.
Like,
yeah.
How do I move
Live
forward?
abundantly in every stage.
Right.
And that menopause isn't something we just get through and come out the other side. And then there's this plateau where finally everything
Right.
is wonderful. I'm 45 now and I just keep not reaching a plateau. Right.
Right.
And so, what I hear from women older than me is, hey, that doesn't exist. The plateau isn't there. And so we're always going through these different stages. And how do we live most abundantly through each one?
Right. Because it can sound a little depressing to go, oh, there's never going to be a plateau. But the good news is then God must have given us a way to live where we are, and the book is so good in covering so many different topics of, from body image to everything, to stress, to everything else, that we can live within our limitations, I guess is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
And live well. So there is a chapter if you're a mom listening and you've got little kids, send them in the other room to watch some Veggie Tales, because there's a chapter about sex, sleep, and even a mention of CPAP machines, which again had me laughing. But I wonder if you could share why it was important for you to address these topics in this book.
Yeah, we just have a hard time talking about sex,
Yes,
even still. Yeah, and no matter how old we are, we have a hard time talking about it. And there is, for some reason, always just this little bit of shame, whether you're a young person having sex and you feel like you shouldn't be, or you're in midlife and you're not having as much sex as you feel like you should be with your spouse, or you're having pain or problems with it. Like, we just have a hard time talking about it. And so I wanted there to be a chapter pointing out some of those difficulties that we may be having, especially in midlife. And then my hope is that it could be like a jumping off point. If you have the book in hand, it would be easier for you to bring up with your provider to say, hey, I was reading this book and she's talking about some of the genitourinary symptoms of menopause. And I realize I am having some trouble with dryness. And could we talk about that?
Right.
So I'm hoping that it will just introduce some of the topics, some of the things that might come up, and then it will make it a little easier for women to address with their providers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then by the same token, sleep. I think for some reason, sleep is the first thing to go for us when we're stressed or whatever. We don't prioritize it very well. Or maybe we are trying to prioritize it and like we can't sleep. And so we're like, I wish doctors would stop telling me to get more sleep, because I try to get sleep and I can't sleep. I can't fall asleep, or I don't stay asleep, or I'm having these night sweats. And so I just, again, wanted to shed some light on some of the common issues and different things that can be done, or different actual illnesses that can be treated. Things like periodic limb movement disorder, or as I mentioned, with the CPAP machine, like sleep apnea. Is there a reason you're not sleeping? Is there something going on? So yeah, I end that chapter just talking about bedroom hygiene in general, and how can we set ourselves up for the most success in the areas of both sleep and sex, and just changes we can make as far as routine and different things that can help both of those. So hopefully women will come away with some practical tools, but then some ideas for further conversation with their providers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you did a great job of that. And again, I go back to something you said at the beginning, we're constantly saying, well, this is how I should be doing this, or this is how I should be.
Yes. Because again, not only is there kind of an ideal for how our bodies should look, there's like this ideal for how our bodies should operate.
Right.
And so we sort of have this idea that like, well, all these other couples are having sex 3 times a week and they're doing great. And, you know, they don't have these issues, and that isn't the case for us. And so again, it just comes back to you and your unique body and your unique needs. And really that needs to be a conversation with your partner. Sure. And setting some expectation. I hate to use the word expectation, but just how can we mesh our needs together, and sort of take away the idea that if you're not having sex 3 times a week, there's something wrong with your sex life.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Because again, that's really individual. And I think I even say in the book, like, who decided that anyway?
Right.
Like, who made up these parameters? Really, it should depend on you and what is working best for you and for your spouse and for your relationship together.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Very good. So as we're kind of wrapping up, what do you think, and you've kind of touched on this, what do you think needs to change in the conversation around women's health and women's midlife health in particular?
Yeah. We have kind of talked about some of those things. On top of that, I think just the idea that everything is fixable, I think needs to come off the table. So there are a lot of things we can do to help. We can treat specific symptoms. We can make things comfortable as you move through life, right? And there's a lot of help available. And your body will be different in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and beyond, right? So there are some inevitable changes that come along with growing older and with aging. And again, I think we're kind of sold this idea of anti-aging, and that isn't necessarily a real thing, right?
You mean
that
the cream doesn't really work?
The cream's not going to do it. Your body's going to be different in your, later years than it was when you were 20. And I personally don't want to spend my time chasing that.
Right.
And I want to sort of relieve women from the chase. Right. And so to just say everything is not fixable. And there is some help for me. I don't have to be alone or uncomfortable necessarily. But let's be a little bit more realistic with what's available to us.
Absolutely. I love that. I love how you just described that, and chasing down something that we can't possibly catch. But the kindness of saying, let's help you with what we can help you with so you're comfortable. And I think this is just a human nature issue of we were created in the garden for this perfection. And we long for that. I talk a lot here on the podcast about, I think it's 1 John 3:2 that says we're living in the now and the not yet. And, we want what we were designed for in the garden, but we're in a broken world with bodies that age and, have illnesses and relationships that we have to struggle with. So I just love that reminder that this is not how it was supposed to be. There's a sense where we have to accept that.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say, I think that is very hard to acknowledge, but when we do and we find some level of acceptance and sort of letting go of that picture of how it was supposed to be, I think there's a lot of peace available to us. And of all the things that I want most in my life, when it really boils down to, I want some peace. I would love to just be at peace. And I do think it's available to us. I think it's an everyday thing we have to come back to. But that is what most of my prayers center around, just the letting go, the acceptance of what is. And there is so much peace available to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, I would love for you to share where our listeners can find you. And I will put links to your website and to how they can get the book and everything in the show notes. But tell us how we can find you.
Yeah, that's great. I actually decided to leave social media, I don't know, January time, I think. And so I am writing solely now over on my website. It's michaelaalbertsonmd.com. I do have a great little monthly newsletter that I call Love Notes. And I love to just write about what's going on. I always share a few of these sort of health topics and different things that are pertinent to midlife women, a fun podcast, maybe a recipe or two. And so that's where most of my readers are now, is through the newsletter. So I'd be so happy if listeners would come and join.
Yes. And I've gotten a few of them now since I signed up, and am enjoying that. In fact,
oh, thanks.
One of your recent ones, I'm going to forget now exactly what it was about, but you were snuggling. There's a picture of you snuggling with your dog on the couch, I think.
Yeah.
Talking about that.
Yep. My dog is dying. My dog has hemangiosarcoma. And so she's doing great. Actually, right now, the vet said a few weeks to maybe a few months. And it's already been a few weeks. And so she's doing awesome. But she is kind of this constant reminder, I think, right now of being really present. And so she is enjoying the last little bits of her life, and it's making me really present alongside her. And so that was sort of the idea that I shared in that last newsletter.
Yes, that was so good. And I was even thinking, and we were talking about the stress cycle earlier, because I was not a dog person until I had 4 kids, and several of them had medical trauma and developmental trauma. And all of a sudden, this dog that I never knew I needed was like my therapy. But I started thinking, and we have another dog now because that one passed away. But I think that's one way I complete that stress cycle.
Yeah.
Snuggling with my dog, because he's just like, you're the best mom. Like, he's always happy to see me. He doesn't complain about his food. Like, it's just, but it's crazy. While you were talking about the stress cycle, I was like, I think Rocket is one way I complete the stress cycle.
Yeah, that's your interaction and affection that you get.
Right.
Our pets are such great companions.
They are. They absolutely are. Well, Michaela, thank you so much for sharing with us today, with my listeners, and again for this book. I told you I had a PDF copy, and I listened to the audiobook, but I had to go get my own physical copy because I was like, there is so much in here. I like to highlight too, and I want to just be able to reference it. So, again, if you've enjoyed what you've heard, been inspired, this is not a medical manual. This is a story that also gives you some medical advice and some hope and some wisdom and some insight. And you will be laughing too, because it's very real and authentic, which I appreciate. So I do want to get you back to talk about your first book, because I think that would be a great fit with my listeners here. So
yeah, I would love that. That's why I was drawn to your podcast. I'm like, well, I'm perfect. Yeah. Well, that sounds just right up my alley.
So I'll link to that one in the show notes too. But again, thank you so much for taking this time and for sharing with my listeners today on Imperfect.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Seriously, y'all, don't you just love her? Like, she makes you feel so seen and known. So you want to go grab this book from the link in the show notes. And before you go, I just want to leave you with 2 questions and encouragements before we close. Number 1 is this: are you trying to do it all to prove your worth, either to yourself or to others, or maybe even to God? Just because you can do it all doesn't mean you need to. Accepting the stage of life you're in can really help you pare down a little where you need to and embrace what's best for you right now. Embrace what God has called you to right now, not what He's called your friend to, or your sister, or your coworker. You can head back to episodes number 47 and 48 if you struggle with comparison, because there's a lot of examples in those 2 episodes and a few strategies there for you to identify with and just grab onto. And number 2, are you in the process of discovering a new identity in this season of life? Whether it's singleness or empty nesting or any other new season that has you at a loss for meaning or purpose or just what you should be expecting of yourself, I would challenge you to make sure you are grounded on the foundation of who you are in Jesus. While you may need to acknowledge the loss you may be feeling as you exit one season, God truly has a plan for you in this new season or stage of life. We don't run out of usefulness or worth in God's sight because we've reached midlife. He is at work, and His arms are always extended for us to come alongside and join Him in it. As always, I'm praying that you're able to see glimpses of God's glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life this week. I'll see you next time.